Hello YouTube and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Vanessa and I teach 2nd grade in Southern California. This is my 5th year teaching and my first 2 years teaching were actually both combination classes. So that is the inspiration for today's video. I'm going to be giving you all of my tips and tricks for teaching a combo class. So a combo class is going to be a class with 2 grade levels, at least that's what it was where I lived. It was, my first one was a 4-5 and then my second one was a 1-2 combo. So I wanted to give you guys my tips and tricks because it can be kind of a hot mess. Like teaching a combo class can be a very daunting task, and I know it was something as my first 2 years teaching I struggled, but I also found ways that I made it work for me, and so I wanted to share those with you guys. And I know when I first started my channel and I had mentioned that I taught combo classes, a lot of people had asked for advice on how to teach combo classes, and from the research I've done, I did a little bit of research for this video trying to see if there was any other tips and tricks that kind of just sparked memory, because it's been a few years now since I've done my combo classes. So I looked through some resources just to see if there was anything that I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I used to do that kind of thing, and there's really nothing out there. So I know if you're going into a combo class, like the first thing I would do would be to go online and like look for help, and there really just wasn't much out there. So I wanted to provide this video for you guys to just help you out if you find yourself in that situation. So if you're interested in how I taught a combo class, then just keep watching. Okay, so my first tip is to find commonalities between grade levels. So when I taught like 4th and 5th, a lot of times, or even like the 1st and 2nd grade class as well, a lot of times math you can almost teach some things together, and then maybe like the older grade just kind of goes like a step further with it, or maybe like the lower grade is doing, you know, 2-digit and like the upper grade is doing 3-digit or something along those lines. So I would always go through and look at my curriculum as a whole between the 2 grades and find, my dog is in here and he's literally chasing his tail on the bed, so that's happening. Anyway, I would find commonalities between the grade levels so that those were things that I knew I could teach as a whole group and I didn't have to divide my kids. So it just made it a lot easier. Sometimes with like grammar and stuff with ELA, there was a lot of things that I could do as a whole group and it didn't really matter because it was almost identical between grade levels. I think with Common Core now, it made it so much easier to find things that did I guess the word would be transferred between grade levels, because a lot of times the standards that you look at are almost identical between every single grade level. Yes, the expectation is obviously going to be more difficult. They might add more pieces to it, but a lot of times those standards are the same throughout each grade level, K through 5. There's like one standard I was looking at the other day, and it's reading fluency, and it's almost word for word the same from 1st through 5th grade. The only thing that gets added is like the word poetry. So you just kind of have to figure out like what's going to be the same and what's going to be different that you're going to have to divide your class. Another tip, and this is probably my absolute biggest tip, is to pretty much run your class in a center station rotation sort of style. Which kind of sounds obvious, I guess, because you have 2 grade levels, you really have to like teach everything through centers. You have to be able to like give, say, your 1st grader something to do while you're working with your 2nd graders, or vice versa, give something for your 2nd graders to do while you work with your 1st graders. I know when I taught the 1-2 combo, I had a very small amount of 1st graders. I think I only had like 7 maybe, and then I had like 14 or so 2nd graders. So I would end up doing like 3 stations. I would do like a whole group 1st grade lesson, so say if it were math, and then my 2nd graders would be working on like 2 different things. So like one of them might be working on a game, one of them might be working on like iReady or like a computer program or something. And then my 2nd graders, I would actually split into 2 groups, and I would kind of group them into like a higher 2nd grade and like a lower 2nd grade in terms of that skill that we were working on. And that's just what worked for me. If I had had it divided equally between 1st and 2nd grade, I don't know that I could have done like 4 rotations. You kind of just have to figure out what works for you. And then if you also have a help, if you have like a paraprofessional, if you have an aide, if you have an awesome parent helper, helper. I know that year I had a really, really good parent helper, and I could easily put her with a group of students and let her almost kind of like lead a lesson if or something like that didn't really need me, that she just kind of needed to walk through with them. Then I would have her do stuff like that. So find help and then just group your kids the way that they need to be grouped. No. So going along with that is also to have a list of like must-dos and may-dos. So that's something that's super helpful, because then kids aren't coming up to you and saying, hey, I'm finished, what do I do next? Which is something with any class, like I feel like is very important to have must-dos and may-dos. But especially with a combo class, like you need to have those may-dos ready that they know they can go straight to if they're finished with the task that you gave them, and they don't ever need to come up to you and interrupt, because it's not like they're just interrupting like a little small group and it's like an intervention kind of group. Like that's their whole group lesson, and you really don't want that group to be interrupted every single time. So it's super important to have a good strong like may-do list in your class. Like even not even like a must-do list, it's more just like you need to have you need to have a may-do list so that they know exactly what to do when they find themselves finished with something, if that makes sense. I also like when you are teaching smaller groups, you can actually pull students from other grade levels into like that group. That didn't make sense. Like if I'm teaching a 1-2 combo and I have a second grader who maybe is just really struggling with like reading or something, especially when it comes to reading, I feel like that's an easy place for you to group students across grade levels, and it really doesn't matter because a book is a book. And I know in my second grade class, like I have students who are reading at 4th grade level and I have students who are reading at kindergarten level, and it doesn't mean I still always pull a second grade book. Like when I'm doing guided reading, I pull a book that's going to be at their level because it's in a small group. Whole group, yes, I always pull, you know, a second grade text, but if I'm teaching this kid how to read and they are struggling with their reading, I'm going to pull a book at their level that they can not necessarily do independent, but they can do with support from me. So it is really nice if you do have like either a 1st grader, I'm just going to keep using 1st and 2nd grade as like my example, but if I had a 1st grader who was like a really high reader, really strong reader, I could group them with my 2nd grade reading groups and it wouldn't really make a difference. And then same goes if I had a 2nd grader who was just really struggling with something, I could always group them with a 1st grade group and give them that support that they need and find a group that kind of matches with them. Because sometimes when you do have a 1 grade level class, you end up with a student who kind of ends up having to be like in their own reading group just because no other student maybe matches their level. And so it is nice when you do have another grade level in there for that sake. Now, that doesn't necessarily work well with other subjects just because the content obviously is different, but I think with reading groups, it's one really good place that you can really like mix and match your kids and it doesn't really matter. Another thing I think that is super, super important is you have to really take the time to train your kids when you are in a combo class. You have to train them to be independent, and that goes back to that whole may-do list of things that they know that they can go to. They need to be able to be trained on how to be independent and how to not interrupt you or teaching, because that is that grade level's time. They have to know how to be independent, and that's something that you have to practice with your kids all the time throughout the entire year. It's not just something that you can just teach once and they're just going to be independent, especially with the little guys. It was easier with the 4th and 5th graders, but with my little guys in 1st and 2nd grade, like it's hard to get 1st graders who are fresh out of kindergarten to be independent, and so that was something I really had to take my time in creating, was that independence in my classroom and giving them those things of like, hey, you're finished, so here's something else you can go do. Leading into that, one really good thing about combo classes is that you have half a grade level of basically peer tutors in your room, which is so cool. When I taught 1st and 2nd grade, I had 2nd graders who could tutor my 1st graders. I could pair them up and I would have somebody in 2nd grade who had already gone through all of that and who had already done all of that, and they could provide support for that 1st grade friend, and it wasn't something that even I had to do. So you have like built-in tutors within your classroom, and utilize them as much as you can. If you are trying to teach something and you know the 2nd grader already knows how to do it, use that 2nd grader to model it for the 1st graders. Use the 2nd grader to help as like an intervention for your first graders. Whatever the case may be, use those upper grade kids to support your lower grade kids, especially if they're kids that you had already had in your class before. I never had that luxury of having anyone the same, because I taught 4-5 and then 1-2, so I never had a kid like twice. But if you ever had a kid twice, like if you taught a 1-2 combo 2 years in a row or whatever, you definitely, those kids would already know your routine, and they could easily help to teach the lower grade the routine as well. And then my two last kind of tips or tricks, and the last one's not really a trick or tip, but one thing is just a reminder, just a reminder of not really dipping into, I caution you, don't dip into too much curriculum for the next grade level with your lower grade level kid. So for example, I'm thinking about like we have, or we had at that school, this is a different school that I'm teaching at currently, but we had a reading program. We used journeys, and I tried my best not to dip into second grade with my first graders, because when they get to second grade, I don't want them to look at everything and be like, oh, well, I already did this. Now, if you're just teaching a skill, that's completely different. If you're like, hey, I'm gonna get you ahead because you are already like past first grade standards, you can kind of come work with second graders and learn this skill, I think that's perfectly fine. Now, when it comes to actual curriculum though, when it comes to like a story they're gonna read within their curriculum, don't dip too much into the next grade, because they're gonna get to the next grade, and especially if it's not you as their teacher, and they're gonna tell their teacher, I've already read this, I've already done it. So just be careful. And then especially with like second grade, they would have been like, oh, we already read this in first grade kind of thing. So just be careful in that sense of dipping too much on just curriculum. If you're, like I said, if you're focused on a skill, kind of different story, but if you're focused on an actual piece of the curriculum, you kind of just want to be careful in that. And then my last tip is, my district now, which is not the district I taught combo classes in, but we are huge on essentials for each grade level. So we have a list of essentials throughout each, or for every grade level, that our district has decided as, you know, second grade team, first grade team, what is the most important thing that they need to leave, or they need to know leaving that grade to go to the next grade. Like if they don't know this, they're going to drown kind of thing when they get to the following grade. And I think that that's something that's really important knowing in a combo class. And maybe your district doesn't do something like that, but maybe that's something who you could talk to, like maybe the team of second grade, and say like, what is the most essential thing? They would know. Like any grade level team pretty much is going to know like what's the most essential thing, and like what are the things that, like, yes, it's important, but if you don't get to it, you don't get to it. We can't get to every single thing. We can't get to every single standard, and that's just like the way it is. I think it's a quote from Mike Matos, who is part of like the whole PLC process. He, there's a video I've seen of him, and actually I think when I saw him speak, he also said it, but he said if we were to follow, like, or if our kids were to learn every single standard with like complete clarity, our students would be in school for like, it was something like 23 years or like something outrageous. There's just no way. Okay, you gotta get out of here. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is there's just no way that you can get to everything. And especially with combo classes, you are going to have to sacrifice certain things and know that like it just wasn't an essential. Now there's certain things you want to make sure that you're not sacrificing. If it is an essential for the following grade, you want to make sure that you are hitting those things as best as you can. And that's with any grade, like even a single level class. That's something that you really have to think about. If you are deciding between like, hey, I only have time for, you know, one activity, and you know, I'm out of time and I have to move on, which one is going to be the most beneficial for my kids, which one's going to be the most important, and which is something that they can probably get the following year, or that they can kind of get throughout other things, like maybe I can integrate it within my reading time or something like that. So I think it's really important as a combo class to really have a clear understanding of what is essential for that grade level and what cannot be, or what can those kids not leave without knowing. Not leave without knowing. I think that makes sense. I don't know. I think you guys get what I'm trying to say. But just having a really, you need to understand what they need to know, so that you can be sure of mastering those skills before they leave to the next grade, because I feel like it's true with a combo class, like there's just no way you're going to get to everything, even more so than with a single level class, and that's just like nature of the beast, I think you would say. I don't know, but you need to know those essentials. Alright, and those are all my tips and tricks for teaching a combo class, and I know the second I end off this video, all throughout the rest of the day today, I'm going to be thinking of things and I'm like, oh, I should have included that. So if you have any other really good ideas, I want you to leave them down below, especially if you've taught a combo class. And I should have mentioned before that these tips can also just be great for a single level class, in terms of just like having an intervention group, I guess, within your classroom. Like if you have a really big range of levels within your group, then this is kind of a good video for you, because a lot of times you end up having to teach your class like a split level class because you have such a big range. Like even though you're only teaching one grade level, like I said, I have kids who are reading at kindergarten level versus kids who are reading at like 4th grade level in my class, and that's pretty typical. So a lot of times I have to use a lot of these tips myself for teaching my single grade level class. So if you have any other really good tips for a class like that, that's either very divided or a combo class, then make sure to leave them down below so other people can see your ideas as well. And if I think of any other ideas as well that just like I have to get to you guys, I will also leave it in a comment down below, and I will just like what's it called, like pin the comment or whatever. So if there's just like a dire thing I need to tell you, I will have it down below. And if you haven't already followed me on Instagram, make sure you follow me over there. I've been trying to be very active on there, posting a lot, giving you guys a lot of like ideas and tips and tricks on just being a teacher, and so make sure you guys check me out over there. And if you haven't caught up on all my videos, I would love for you guys to subscribe and catch up on those videos. I vlog pretty much every day for the most part. I try to post on the even days of the month, so every other day, so make sure you catch up on my videos. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh, and t-shirts. We sell t-shirts. That is always linked down below. And we have our boutique, which new clothing should be coming like soon. I'm sorry, it's been just crazy. Time is just flying. Like, I don't know where it's going. So make sure you check that out down below as well, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye.